If your husband ever gives you a rule that makes no sense, pay attention to the way he reacts when you break it. I used to think Daniel's family dinners were normal. A little formal maybe. A little uncomfortable. But normal. Every Sunday at exactly 6:30 p.m., we drove 40 minutes to his mother's house outside of Milford, Connecticut. Same road. Same faded white mailbox. Same dead flower beds lining the walkway. And every single time we pulled into that driveway, Daniel would glance at me with this strange little smile that never quite reached his eyes. "You remembered the rule, right?" he'd ask. At first, I thought he was joking. The rule was simple. Never refuse dinner. Not once. Not even if I was sick. Not even if we were fighting. Not even during the blizzard last January when half the roads were frozen solid and state troopers were telling people to stay home. Daniel still drove us there in silence with both hands locked tightly on the steering wheel, while snow hammered against the windshield like thrown gravel. "My mother notices these things," he told me that night. I laughed the first few times he said it. Then I stopped laughing because he never laughed back. The weird thing wasn't the rule itself. Families have traditions. The weird thing was how serious he became whenever I questioned it. One Sunday, about 8 months after we got married, I told him I wanted to skip dinner because I had a migraine. I remember standing in our bathroom holding the edge of the sink while the light stabbed behind my eyes. Daniel stood in the doorway watching me, completely expressionless. "We're still going," he said quietly. "Daniel, I can barely stand up. Take Tylenol. Why does this matter so much?" For a second, something cold moved across his face. Not anger exactly. Fear. Then it disappeared. "Please don't make this difficult, Emily." That was the first moment I felt it. That tiny crack underneath the marriage. Like stepping onto a frozen lake and hearing ice shift beneath your feet. "Still," I went. "Because that's what you do when you love someone. You ignore the strange things. You explain them away. You tell yourself every marriage has quirks." His mother's house always smelled the same. Rosemary. Old books. Burnt butter. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked louder than any clock should. And somehow dinner always began exactly at 7:17 p.m. Not 7:15. Not 7:20. Exactly 7:17. Daniel's mother barely spoke to me during those meals. She'd stare at me over the rim of her wine glass like she was comparing my face to a memory only she could see. Sometimes I caught her whispering to Daniel in the kitchen. Sometimes both of them would go silent the second I entered the room. But the strangest part happened after dessert. Every single time. I'd feel exhausted. Not regular tired. Not sleepy after a long day. I mean heavy. Like somebody had quietly replaced my blood with wet cement. My thoughts slowed down. Sounds became distant. Even lifting my fork felt difficult. The first time it happened, I actually apologized at the table because I thought I was coming down with the flu. Daniel squeezed my hand gently. "You just need rest," he said. Then I woke up in our bed the next morning wearing different clothes. I assumed he helped me change because I passed out in the car ride home. Couples do that for each other. No big deal. But then it happened again the next Sunday. And the Sunday after that. And the Sunday after that. Always after dinner. Always after the wine. Deep sleep. Blank memory. Morning confusion. At first I blamed stress from work. I'm an accountant. Tax season had been brutal. 70-hour weeks. Constant caffeine. Barely sleeping. My doctor even told me exhaustion could cause memory gaps. So I believed that explanation. Until the buttons started bothering me. It sounds ridiculous now. Tiny shirt buttons. Such a stupid detail to obsess over. But once you notice something strange repeating over and over, your brain refuses to let it go. Every Monday morning after those dinners, my blouse buttons would be uneven. One button shifted into the wrong hole. Crooked. Messy. Like someone fastened them quickly in the dark. The first time I noticed, I laughed at myself in the mirror before work. The second time felt odd. By the fourth time, I stopped laughing. One morning I stared at my reflection for nearly 10 minutes. Pale face. Smudged mascara beneath my eyes. Top button wrong again. I remember touching it slowly while this horrible little chill crawled down my arms. Daniel was shaving beside me. Calm as always. "Did you button my shirt last night?" I asked. He didn't even look at me. "You probably dressed yourself half asleep. I don't remember coming home. You were exhausted." Buzz. 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 His razor hummed across his jawline while he watched me through the mirror. "You do weird things when you're tired, Emily." Weird things. The way he said it stayed with me all day. That night I checked my phone. 9:12 p.m. Last text sent to my coworker during dinner. Then nothing until 7:43 a.m. the next morning. Nearly 11 hours vanished. I tried to remember the drive home. Nothing. Tried to remember brushing my teeth. Nothing. Even stranger. I started waking up with tiny details that didn't make sense. Once my necklace clasp was backward. Another time my earrings were missing entirely. One Monday morning my hair smelled faintly like cigarette smoke even though neither Daniel nor his mother smoked. "You're overthinking," Daniel told me whenever I brought it up. "You've been anxious lately." And maybe he was right. Maybe I was spiraling. Maybe marriage was making me paranoid in ways I didn't understand yet. But then came the night I tried to refuse dinner again. And the look on Daniel's face changed everything. The second time I tried to skip dinner at Daniel's mother's house, he did not argue right away. That was what scared me most. Usually he pushed back immediately. Calm voice. Tight smile. Quiet pressure that somehow always made me give in. But this time, he just stared at me from across the kitchen while I packed my laptop bag for work the next morning. The silence lasted too long. "I am serious," I told him. "I am not going this Sunday." Daniel leaned against the counter with his coffee mug in both hands. "Why?" "Because something weird keeps happening to me there." "Nothing weird is happening." "Then explain the missing hours." "You fall asleep. People do not lose entire nights from being tired." He looked down into his coffee for a second before answering. "You have been under pressure lately." There it was again. That same careful tone. Like he was talking to somebody unstable. "Do you hear yourself?" I asked. "Every single Monday I wake up confused. My clothes are wrong. I cannot remember getting home." "Emily." "No. Stop pretending this is normal." His jaw tightened slightly. Just enough for me to notice. "My mother already asked if we are coming." "Then tell her no." Another silence. Heavy this time. The refrigerator hummed between us while rain tapped softly against the kitchen windows. Daniel finally set the mug down. "Please do not embarrass me." Embarrass him. Not concern. Not worry. Embarrassment. Something cold settled into my stomach. "Why is dinner at that house more important than your wife feeling safe?" I asked quietly. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward me slowly until he stood close enough for me to smell his cologne. Cedarwood. Clean. Familiar. Usually comforting. Not anymore. "You are overthinking things," he said softly. "And if you keep feeding this paranoia, you are going to damage our marriage." The word paranoia hit me harder than it should have. Because some small part of me had already started wondering if he was right. Lack of sleep changes people. Stress changes people. I spent the entire next week trying to convince myself I was imagining things. I even apologized to him Thursday night. We were sitting on the couch watching some reality cooking show neither of us cared about. "Maybe I have been acting weird lately," I admitted. Daniel smiled instantly. Too instantly. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders and kissed the top of my head. "You just need rest." "I still do not understand why I cannot remember anything after dinner." "Wine hits you hard when you are exhausted." "Maybe. You have always been sensitive to alcohol." That was not true. Daniel knew that. Before we got married, we spent a weekend in Nashville with friends and I drank bourbon until 2 in the morning without blacking out once. But hearing him say it so confidently made me question my own memory. That was the strange thing about Daniel. He never sounded defensive. Never angry. He sounded reasonable. Calm. Patient. Like a doctor explaining symptoms to someone who refused to accept reality. By Sunday afternoon, I almost believed him. Almost. Then I found the button. I was doing laundry downstairs while Daniel mowed the lawn outside. I remember kneeling beside the dryer matching socks when I noticed one tiny white shirt button sitting near the floor drain. Not unusual by itself. Except it was not from any shirt I owned. I knew because the button had a small gold thread stitched through the center. Fancy. Expensive looking. Definitely not mine. I carried it upstairs and checked Daniel's dress shirts. None matched. Where did this come from? I asked when he came back inside sweaty from mowing. He barely glanced at it. No idea. It was downstairs by the dryer. Probably old. It looks new. He shrugged and reached for a bottle of water. Conversation over. But later that night, while he slept beside me, I kept staring at that button on my nightstand. Tiny thing. Meaningless maybe. Yet my chest would not stop tightening every time I looked at it. Sunday evening arrived too fast. The drive to his mother's house felt different this time. Quieter. Daniel kept both hands on the wheel the entire ride. No music. No small talk. Just headlights cutting through dark Connecticut backroads while trees blurred past the windows like shadows. Halfway there, I made a decision. I was going to stay awake. No matter what happened. I slipped my phone into my jacket pocket and opened the voice recorder app before we even parked. Maybe hearing the night afterward would help explain things. Maybe I would finally prove to myself that none of this was real. Dinner started exactly at 7:17 again. Roast chicken. Green beans. Mashed potatoes. Same rosemary smell drifting through the house. Same ticking grandfather clock echoing from the hallway. Daniel's mother wore a dark red sweater that made her pale skin look almost gray beneath the dining room light. She barely touched her food. Mostly she watched me. You look tired tonight, Emily, she said suddenly. Long week, I answered. You should rest more. Daniel glanced at her quickly. Tiny movement. Barely noticeable. But something passed between them in that moment. Something silent. Something rehearsed. My pulse started climbing. I reached for my wine glass carefully. I had already decided not to drink more than a sip. Just enough to avoid making things awkward. The wine tasted strange. Not bad exactly. Sweeter than usual maybe. Heavier somehow. I set the glass down immediately. Daniel noticed. Everything okay? Fine. His mother smiled faintly without looking up from her plate. You always did get nervous here. The sentence hit me like ice water. Always. Not lately. Not recently. Always. My fingers tightened around the fork. What does that mean? I asked. But before either of them answered, the grandfather clock suddenly chimed from the hallway. 9 loud metallic echoes through the house. 9 o'clock. And right then, I felt it again. That horrible heaviness spreading through my body. Fast. Too fast. My arms suddenly felt weak. The room blurred slightly around the edges. No. No, no, no. I had barely touched the wine. Panic rose instantly inside my chest. I slipped my hand into my jacket pocket and pressed harder against my phone, silently praying the recorder was still running. Daniel was watching me carefully now. Not concerned. Observing. Like he had been expecting this exact moment. Emily? He asked softly. My tongue felt thick. What did you? The dining room lights seemed too bright suddenly. My heartbeat slowed strangely inside my ears. Across the table, Daniel's mother folded her napkin with calm, precise movements. Then she looked directly at me for the first time all night. And smiled. The next thing I remember was sunlight. Pale gray morning light leaking through the bedroom curtains and cutting across my face. For a few seconds I just lay there staring at the ceiling, completely still, trying to understand why my heart was racing. Then it hit me. The dinner. The wine. Daniel's mother smiling at me across the table while the room tilted sideways. I sat up too fast and immediately felt dizzy. My throat was dry. My body felt heavy again, like I had slept for 2 days instead of 1 night. Beside me, Daniel's side of the bed was empty. The shower was running. Somewhere down the hall. I looked down at myself. Different clothes again. Gray sweatshirt. Loose pajama pants I did not remember putting on. My stomach tightened. Slowly, carefully, I checked the buttons on the sweatshirt. Crooked. One hole off near the middle. My breathing changed instantly. Fast. Uneven. No. No. I climbed out of bed and grabbed my phone from the nightstand so quickly I almost dropped it. The voice recorder app was still open. Recording length, 5 hours, 11 minutes. My chest tightened so hard it actually hurt. I pressed play immediately. At first all I heard was muffled dinner noise. Forks against plates. The grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Daniel asking if anyone wanted more wine. Then my own voice sounding slower than normal. Tired. Confused. After that came silence. Long stretches of static and rustling fabric. Car doors. Footsteps maybe. My pulse hammered harder with every second. Then suddenly, voices. Daniel's voice first. Calm. Quiet. She is almost asleep. A second voice answered. His mother. Not yet. My fingers went numb around the phone. The audio crackled heavily after that like the microphone had been covered. Then I heard something else. A sound I could not explain. Soft humming. Female humming. Very close to the phone. Not Daniel's mother. Younger. Slower. Almost soothing. My entire body went cold. I skipped forward through the recording with shaking fingers. More static. More muffled movement. Then around the 3-hour mark, my own voice suddenly whispered something. So faint I almost missed it. Who is she? Silence. Then Daniel answered quietly. Go back to sleep, Emily. The shower turned off down the hall. Panic shot through me instantly. I locked my phone and shoved it beneath the blanket just as Daniel walked into the bedroom drying his hair with a towel. Morning, he said casually. Like nothing had happened. Like my entire reality was not collapsing in real time. I stared at him too long before answering. Morning. He paused slightly. You okay? Just tired. He smiled. Rough night? The way he said it made my skin crawl. I forced myself to stay calm. I barely remember getting home. You passed out in the car. Did I say anything weird? His eyes flickered for 1 second. Tiny movement. But I saw it. No. Lie. I knew it was a lie. Because I heard the recording. But instead of confronting him, I nodded slowly like I believed him. Something inside me had shifted overnight. Fear was still there. But now another feeling sat beside it. Certainty. Something was happening to me in that house. Something planned. Deliberate. And Daniel was involved. The thought should have shattered me emotionally. Instead it made me strangely calm. Like my brain finally stopped fighting itself. That morning after Daniel left for work, I listened to the recording 3 more times. Every sound. Every pause. Searching for details. Around the 4-hour mark I noticed another strange thing. A metallic noise. Rhythmic. Like keys jingling softly. Then footsteps descending wooden stairs. Basement stairs maybe. I replayed that section at least 20 times. The audio quality was terrible, but one thing became painfully clear. I had not spent the entire night unconscious in the car or asleep in bed. I had been awake at some point. Somewhere else. Around noon I drove to a pharmacy 30 minutes away where nobody knew me. I bought two things: a small sleep tracking camera disguised as a phone charger, and an over-the-counter drug testing kit designed to detect sedatives in drinks. The cashier barely looked at me, but I still felt paranoid carrying the bag back to my car, like everyone around me somehow knew my marriage was rotting from the inside. That night I hid the camera in our bedroom facing the bed. Daniel never noticed. He spent the evening answering work emails on his laptop while I pretended to watch television beside him. Every few minutes I caught him studying me from the corner of his eye, measuring something silently. "You seem quiet today," he finally said. "Long day. You are still upset about dinner?" I shrugged. "Maybe I just need sleep." He smiled faintly at that. "Probably." Around midnight he fell asleep quickly beside me. I did not. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above us while questions spiraled endlessly through my head. Who was humming in the recording? Why did his mother say, "Not yet"? What happened during those missing hours? And the worst question of all, had this been happening since the beginning of our marriage? Sometime after 2 in the morning I finally drifted off. But sleep did not help. Because I dreamed about the basement. I had never actually seen a basement in Daniel's mother's house before. But in the dream I knew exactly where it was. Narrow wooden stairs behind the kitchen pantry. Yellow light glowing underneath a locked door. And someone standing on the other side whispering my name softly over and over again. Emily. 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 I woke up gasping just before sunrise. Daniel was already awake beside me, watching me. "Bad dream?" he asked quietly. Sweat covered the back of my neck. "How long were you awake?" I asked. "A while." He smiled gently. Too gently. "You were talking in your sleep again." Every nerve in my body tightened. "What did I say?" His eyes held mine for several seconds before he answered. "You asked who she was?" After Daniel said those words, neither of us moved for several seconds. Morning light stretched across the bed between us while my heart pounded so hard I could actually feel it in my throat. You asked who she was? Not who he was. Not what happened. Who she was. That meant something. Because I had heard the humming on the recording too. Female. Young. Close enough to the phone to sound almost beside me. I forced myself to look confused instead of terrified. "I did?" I asked quietly. Daniel nodded once. Calm. Controlled. "You have been talking in your sleep a lot lately." "What else did I say?" "Nothing important." He stood up before I could ask more questions. "I need to get ready for work." Then he left the room. Just like that. No concern. No curiosity. Like this conversation had already happened before in some version of his life I could not remember. The second he disappeared into the hallway, I grabbed the hidden camera from the nightstand drawer and checked the footage from overnight. My hands were shaking badly enough that I nearly dropped it twice. Most of the video was normal. Daniel working on his laptop. Me pretending to watch television. Both of us eventually falling asleep. Timestamp after timestamp passed quietly. Midnight. 1:15. 2 o'clock. Then at exactly 2:43 a.m., Daniel sat up in bed. My stomach tightened immediately. On screen he remained perfectly still for a few seconds, staring directly at me sleeping beside him. Then he slowly turned his head toward the camera. Straight toward it. My blood ran cold. There was no way he could have known it was there. The charger looked completely normal. But somehow his eyes locked onto the lens like he was staring directly at me through the screen. Then he smiled. Not warm. Not loving. Just knowing. I stopped breathing for a second. On the footage, Daniel climbed out of bed and disappeared from the room. 3 minutes later he returned carrying something small in his hand. Pills maybe? I leaned closer to the screen. He stood over me while I slept, watching me carefully. Then he placed the object back into his pocket and returned to bed. That was it. No basement. No strange woman. No missing hours explained. But the way he looked into that camera terrified me more than anything else so far. Because it felt like a message. I know you are watching. That afternoon at work I barely accomplished anything. Numbers blurred together on spreadsheets while my mind replayed the footage over and over again. Around lunchtime I finally called my friend Rachel. I almost hung up before she answered. "Emily?" she said immediately. "You okay?" I had not realized how strange my voice sounded until then. Tight. Thin. Nervous. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Always." I hesitated. Then I told her part of the truth. Not everything. Just enough to hear another human being react. I explained the blackouts. The memory gaps. The exhaustion after dinner at Daniel's mother's house. Rachel went silent for a second. "That does not sound normal." Relief hit me so fast I nearly cried right there in my office chair. "You do not think I am imagining it?" "No." "Honestly? It sounds creepy as hell." I lowered my voice automatically even though nobody sat near my cubicle. "What if it is stress?" "Emily, stress does not make your clothes change." I stared at my computer screen while her words settled heavily inside my chest. "Have you talked to a doctor?" she asked. "Not yet." "You probably should." "And tell them what?" "That my husband's family dinners make me black out." Rachel hesitated. "Do you trust him?" The question hit harder than I expected. Because 2 months earlier I would have answered instantly. Of course I trust him. He is my husband. But now? I did not answer at all. Rachel noticed immediately. "Emily, I have to go," I whispered. "Wait. Promise me something first." "What?" "Do not go back there alone if something feels wrong." I promised. But by Friday evening I already knew I was going back. Because fear changes people. At first it makes you want to run. Then eventually it makes you desperate for answers. I needed to know what happened inside that house after I lost consciousness. I needed proof. Real proof. Saturday morning Daniel acted unusually affectionate. Coffee in bed. Kissing my forehead while I read emails. Touching my shoulder every time he passed behind me in the kitchen. It should have comforted me. Instead it felt rehearsed somehow. Like he was correcting behavior after noticing cracks in a system. Around noon his phone buzzed on the counter while he showered upstairs. I normally never looked at his messages. Never even considered it. But this time I did. One unread text from his mother. Did she remember anything? My entire body went cold. Before I could process the message fully, another text appeared beneath it. "We cannot keep delaying this." I heard the shower shut off upstairs instantly. Panic shot through me. I dropped the phone back exactly where it had been and stepped away from the counter just as Daniel walked downstairs drying his hair with a towel. "Everything okay?" he asked casually. "Yeah." My voice almost cracked. He studied me for 1 second too long. Then smiled. "You seem nervous lately." I forced myself to laugh softly. "Work stress. Maybe you should take some time off." The sentence sounded harmless. Caring even. But something about it felt wrong. Like isolation. Like preparation. Sunday arrived cold and rainy again. Daniel's mother called during the drive over. I could hear her voice faintly through the car speakers. "Did she eat today?" she asked. Silence. Then Daniel glanced at me quickly before answering. "Not much." My stomach dropped. Why would that matter? I pretended not to notice while rain streaked across the windshield in crooked silver lines. About 10 minutes later we turned onto the familiar road leading toward the house. But this time something new caught my attention immediately. Another car parked beside the garage. Dark blue sedan. Mud splashed along the sides. "Who is here?" I asked carefully. Daniel kept his eyes on the road. "Probably one of my mother's friends." "At night?" "She has people over sometimes." But his voice sounded tight. Controlled. Like he had prepared the answer too quickly. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed something else. Light glowing from a basement window near the side of the house. Small. Yellow. Flickering slightly behind old curtains. My pulse jumped instantly. Basement. Real. Not just a dream. Daniel turned off the engine slowly. You coming? He asked. I stared at the glowing basement window for one long, terrible second before answering. Yeah, I whispered. I am coming. The moment we stepped inside the house, I felt it again. Not the exhaustion yet. Something else. The sense that everyone already knew something I did not. Daniel's mother greeted us at the door wearing a cream-colored sweater and dark lipstick that made her smile look strange under the hallway light. Emily, she said softly, almost warmly this time. You look better tonight. Better. Like she had been monitoring me. Like my condition mattered. I forced a smile while my eyes drifted toward the hallway leading deeper into the house. Somewhere beneath us, faintly, I heard movement. A soft thump. Then silence. Daniel took my coat before I could react. Dinner is almost ready, he said casually. But I noticed his attention flick toward the basement side of the house for just half a second. We moved into the dining room exactly like always. Same polished wooden table. Same candles. Same grandfather clock ticking loudly in the hallway. But tonight there was an extra wine glass already sitting beside Daniel's. Mother's plate. My stomach tightened immediately. I thought someone else was here, I said carefully while sitting down. Daniel's mother folded her napkin slowly. A family friend stopped by earlier. Are they still here? No, she answered too quickly. I looked toward the kitchen. Empty. No voices. No footsteps anymore. Yet something felt wrong. The air itself felt crowded somehow. Dinner began at exactly 7:17 p.m. again. This time I barely touched the food. I kept watching the wine bottle every time Daniel poured another glass. Watching his hands. Watching his mother's eyes. Waiting for one mistake. One slip. You should eat more, Daniel said calmly after a few minutes. You barely touched your plate. I am not very hungry. That is not healthy. His mother looked at me carefully over her glass. Weakness can make memory problems worse. There it was again. Memory problems. They kept using those phrases intentionally. Like they were building a story around me piece by piece. I forced myself to stay calm. Funny, I said quietly. I do not remember having memory problems before I married Daniel. Silence hit the table instantly. Daniel's fork stopped moving. His mother lowered her wine glass slowly. For a second nobody spoke. Then Daniel smiled. Too smooth. Too practiced. You are stressed, he said. That is all. Am I? Emily, no, seriously. Explain something to me. My voice sounded steadier now. Stronger. Why do I keep waking up confused after dinner here? Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair. Calm. Controlled. Because you fall asleep. That does not explain the missing hours. You sleep deeply. That does not explain why my clothes are different. His mother interrupted quietly. Maybe you should see a specialist. I turned toward her instantly. Maybe I should. Her expression barely changed. You seem emotionally overwhelmed lately. Emotionally overwhelmed. Not scared. Not concerned. They kept framing me like someone unstable. Slowly. Carefully. Building a narrative. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. If I ever accused them openly without proof, nobody would believe me. I looked like the paranoid wife. The exhausted accountant with stress issues and sleep problems. Daniel looked perfect. Calm husband. Concerned family. My chest tightened hard at the realization. They had an answer prepared for everything. Dinner continued awkwardly after that. Around 8:30, Daniel excused himself to take a phone call outside. The second the back door closed behind him, his mother looked directly at me. You should stop fighting this, she said softly. Every muscle in my body locked instantly. Fighting what? Her expression remained unreadable. Some things become easier once you accept them. Accept what? She tilted her head slightly while studying my face. You ask too many questions now. Cold fear spread through me. What does that mean? But before she could answer, footsteps sounded outside and her entire expression changed instantly. Pleasant again. Controlled. Daniel returned to the table smiling faintly like nothing had happened. Everything okay? He asked. His mother picked up her wine glass calmly. Perfectly fine. I barely survived the next 30 minutes. Every second felt stretched too tight. Every glance between them felt loaded with meaning I could not understand yet. Then at exactly 9:03 p.m., Daniel poured fresh wine into my glass. I watched the dark red liquid swirl beneath the dining room light. Drink, he said gently. My pulse started climbing immediately. I am okay. You barely had any tonight. I said I am okay. His smile faded slightly. Tiny movement. But enough. Across the table, his mother watched silently. Waiting. Suddenly the grandfather clock began chiming again from the hallway. 9 deep metallic sounds echoing through the house. And right underneath the final chime, I heard it. Faint. Almost impossible to notice. A woman humming downstairs. My blood turned to ice. Daniel's mother heard it too. I knew she did because her eyes flicked toward the floor for half a second. Then back to me. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly across the hardwood floor. Excuse me, I said immediately. Daniel frowned. Where are you going? Bathroom. Before either of them could answer, I walked quickly into the hallway with my heart slamming against my ribs. The humming had stopped now. But I knew where it came from. The basement. I moved carefully past the kitchen pretending to search for the bathroom while my eyes scanned the walls desperately. Then I saw it. A narrow pantry door beside the refrigerator slightly cracked open. And behind it, wooden stairs leading downward. My breathing stopped completely. Basement stairs. Exactly like the dream. A dim yellow light glowed from below. I took one slow step closer. Then another. The air near the doorway felt colder somehow. Damp. Still. From somewhere downstairs came the faint sound of movement. Fabric rustling softly. My hand touched the edge of the pantry door. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. But another feeling pushed harder now. I needed answers. Slowly, carefully, I leaned forward and looked down the staircase. At first I saw only shadows. Then, a woman standing at the bottom of the stairs. Blonde hair. Pale skin. Wearing a dark red dress. Completely still. My entire body locked in terror. For one horrifying second I thought she was staring directly at me. Then the kitchen light behind me suddenly clicked on. Emily? Daniel's voice. Right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. Daniel stood in the kitchen doorway holding my coat in one hand. His expression was calm. Too calm. Why are you down here? He asked quietly. I looked back toward the basement stairs instantly. Empty now. No woman. No movement. Just yellow light glowing from below. For a moment I could not answer him. My entire body felt frozen in place while the yellow basement light glowed softly behind the pantry door. Daniel stood only a few feet away watching me carefully. Calm face. Relaxed shoulders. But his eyes looked sharp now. Alert. Measuring every reaction. I was looking for the bathroom, I said finally. The lie sounded weak even to me. Daniel glanced toward the basement stairs for one brief second before looking back at me. The bathroom is upstairs. You know that. I swallowed hard. I got turned around. Silence stretched between us. Somewhere deeper in the house, the grandfather clock ticked steadily through the quiet. Tick. 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 Daniel stepped closer slowly. Did you go downstairs? No. Another lie. His eyes stayed locked on mine for several long seconds. Then suddenly he smiled again. Soft, Gentle. Almost loving. "Come back to the table," he said quietly. "My mother is waiting." I nodded because I did not know what else to do. But as we walked back through the kitchen, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten instantly. A small silver key hanging from Daniel's back pocket. Old-fashioned. Long. Not a house key. More like the kind used for old locks or storage rooms. My eyes stayed fixed on it all the way back to the dining room. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. I barely tasted the food. Barely heard the conversation. Every thought in my head circled around the woman at the bottom of the stairs. Blonde hair. Red dress. Pale skin. Standing completely still beneath that yellow light. Real. She had been real. I knew what I saw. Yet somehow Daniel had arrived at the exact moment she disappeared. Around 10 o'clock, Daniel finally suggested we leave. Relief hit me instantly. I grabbed my coat almost too quickly. But just before we walked out the front door, his mother touched my arm gently. "You should try to sleep better, Emily," she said softly. "Dreams can make people imagine terrible things." My pulse jumped hard. Dreams. She knew. Somehow she knew exactly what I saw downstairs. The drive home was silent for almost 20 minutes. Rain slid across the windshield, while Daniel kept both hands tight on the steering wheel. Finally he spoke. "You have been acting strange lately." I stared out the passenger window. "Strange how?" "Suspicious." "Maybe I have reasons." "Like what?" I turned toward him slowly. "Who is the woman in the basement?" The car drifted slightly before Daniel corrected the wheel. Just enough to notice. "What woman?" "I saw someone downstairs tonight." "No, you did not." The answer came too fast. Too certain. She was wearing red. Daniel exhaled quietly through his nose. "Emily. Stop saying my name like that." "Like what?" "Like I am crazy." His jaw tightened again. Tiny movement. "But there. You have not been sleeping well. You are stressed. You are having vivid dreams." I was awake. "You think you were?" Anger flashed hot through my chest. "Do not do that." "Do what?" "Make me question my own memory." Silence again. The windshield wipers scraped rhythmically through the darkness. Finally Daniel spoke softly without looking at me. "I am trying to help you." That sentence terrified me more than yelling would have. Because he sounded sincere. Completely sincere. Like he truly believed whatever story he was telling himself. When we got home, I waited until Daniel fell asleep before moving quietly out of bed. My heart hammered the entire time. I grabbed his jeans from the chair near the dresser and carefully searched the pockets. Wallet. Receipts. Loose change. Then finally, the silver key. Up close it looked older than I expected. Heavy. Slightly tarnished near the edges. A tiny engraved number sat near the base. 17. I stared at it for several seconds while cold fear spread slowly through my chest. 17. Dinner always started at 7:17. Suddenly that number felt important somehow. Deliberate. I slipped the key into my robe pocket and quietly returned the jeans exactly where they had been. Then I went downstairs to the kitchen and opened my laptop. Part of me knew this was dangerous. Once you start digging into someone's life secretly, you cross a line inside your marriage that never fully uncrosses. But another part of me already understood something darker. Whatever existed between Daniel and that house had started long before me. I searched public records first. Property history. Marriage licenses. Old newspaper archives from Milford and neighboring towns. For almost an hour I found nothing unusual. Then finally, an old article from 8 years earlier. Local woman missing after storm. My breath caught instantly. The article showed a small grainy photo beside the headline. Blonde hair. Pale skin. Sharp cheekbones. My stomach dropped so hard it physically hurt. She looked like me. Not exactly identical. But close enough to make my hand shake against the keyboard. Her name was Claire Holloway. 29 years old. Missing after severe flooding damaged several roads outside Milford County. Search efforts unsuccessful. Possible accidental drowning presumed. I stared at the photo while every nerve in my body screamed. Because I recognized the red dress she was wearing in the article picture. The same dark red dress from the basement. No. No. My breathing turned shallow. I scrolled lower through the article. Then I saw his name. Daniel Carter assisted local search volunteers during the investigation. My entire body went cold. Daniel knew her. I clicked another archive link with shaking fingers. Engagement announcement. Claire Holloway and Daniel Carter. Dated 9 years earlier. The room tilted slightly around me. Engagement. Not friend. Not acquaintance. His fiancée. I sat frozen at the kitchen table staring at the screen while pieces finally began sliding together inside my head. The basement. The photos. The humming woman. The way his mother watched me during dinner. The comments about memory and dreams and acceptance. Then another horrifying thought hit me suddenly. I looked exactly like the woman he lost. Footsteps creaked upstairs. Instantly I slammed the laptop shut and shoved the silver key deep into my robe pocket. My pulse thundered as Daniel slowly descended the staircase in the darkness. He stopped halfway down, looking at me from the shadows. "Emily?" he asked quietly. "What are you doing awake?" I forced myself to breathe normally. Could not sleep. He studied me for several long seconds. Then his eyes drifted downward slightly. Toward my robe pocket. Toward the shape of the hidden key. For one terrible second, I thought Daniel knew everything. The article. The key. The fact that I had finally connected his past to the woman in the basement. He stood halfway down the staircase staring at me while the kitchen light cast shadows across his face. Calm as always. But there was something else there now. Suspicion. I slowly crossed my arms over my robe pocket. I could not sleep, I repeated quietly. Daniel descended the rest of the stairs without breaking eye contact. "You should try." "I was reading." "At 2 in the morning?" He smiled faintly. "That is not like you." Every sentence felt loaded now. Like we were both speaking around the truth. Instead of touching it directly, Daniel moved closer and reached past me for a glass in the cabinet. I held my breath the entire time, terrified he would notice the key hidden against my hip. "You have seemed distant lately," he said softly while filling the glass with water. "Maybe because I keep waking up confused. We already talked about that." "No. You talked. I listened." He sighed quietly. "Emily, I do not know what else you want me to say." I almost told him then. About Claire. About the engagement announcement. About the woman in red standing beneath the basement light. But something stopped me. Instinct maybe. Because if Daniel truly believed I was unstable, confronting him without proof could make everything worse. So instead I forced a tired smile. "Forget it," I whispered. "I am probably just exhausted." His posture relaxed slightly. Tiny movement. But noticeable. "You should get some sleep," he said again. "Big day tomorrow." Big day. The words lingered strangely after he walked back upstairs. I stayed frozen in the kitchen for another full minute before finally pulling the silver key from my pocket again. Number 17 glinted beneath the overhead light. I needed to know what it opened. Monday morning Daniel left for work around 8:30. The second his car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my purse, the key, and drove straight back toward his mother's house. Rain clouds hung low across the Connecticut sky while my hands shook against the steering wheel nearly the entire drive. Part of me knew this was dangerous. Another part no longer cared. I parked 3 houses away and walked the rest of the distance beneath a gray hooded sweatshirt. The neighborhood sat completely quiet. No movement. No cars passing. Just damp wind rustling dead leaves along the sidewalks. Daniel's mother's house looked different in daylight. Smaller somehow. Less mysterious. But the second my eyes drifted toward the basement window, the fear returned instantly. Curtains closed. Yellow light gone. Stillness everywhere. I checked the driveway again. Empty. Then slowly moved toward the side entrance near the kitchen. The door was locked. My pulse jumped hard as I pulled the silver key from my pocket. Please work. The old lock clicked immediately. Cold fear rushed through me. I stepped inside carefully and closed the door behind me without making noise. The house smelled the same as always. Rosemary. Dust. Old wood. But without the dinner lights and conversation, the silence felt wrong. Oppressive somehow. Like the house itself was holding its breath. I moved quickly through the kitchen toward the pantry door. My hands were trembling badly now. Every instinct screamed at me to leave before someone came home. But I could not stop. Not anymore. The pantry door creaked softly as I opened it. Basement stairs descended into darkness below. The yellow light from Sunday night was gone. I hesitated only a second before starting down carefully. The air grew colder with each step. Damp. Heavy. At the bottom of the staircase stood another locked door. Older than the others upstairs. Thick wood. Iron handle. Number 17 carved faintly into the frame. My stomach twisted violently. Slowly, carefully, I slid the silver key into the lock. Click. The door opened inward. At first my brain could not process what I was seeing. The room looked almost normal. Not abandoned. Not filthy. A furnished sitting room beneath the house. Warm lamps. Bookshelves. Cream-colored couch. Framed paintings on the walls. But then my eyes adjusted fully. Photos. Hundreds of them. Covering nearly every inch of the far wall. Women. Blonde women. Pale women. Women with sharp cheekbones and light eyes. Some looked only vaguely similar to me. Others looked frighteningly close. And at the center of the wall, Claire. Smiling beside Daniel in old photographs. Engagement party. Beach trip. Christmas dinner. Happy. Alive. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. This was not random. Daniel had not married me by coincidence. I moved closer slowly while nausea rolled through my stomach. Beneath the photographs sat shelves filled with labeled boxes. One box read Claire. Another read Emily. My hands turned ice cold instantly. I opened the Emily box carefully. Inside were copies of my social media photos. Restaurant receipts from dates Daniel and I shared. Before marriage. Printed emails. Notes written in Daniel's handwriting. Favorite color blue. Prefers silver jewelry. Sensitive to cold weather. Night terrors after stress. Tears burned suddenly behind my eyes. He had been studying me long before I ever met him. Then I noticed the dresses hanging beside the wall. Dark red dresses. Multiple sizes. Multiple styles. One of them matched the dress from Claire's photograph exactly. Footsteps sounded faintly upstairs. My heart stopped. Someone was home. Panic exploded through my chest instantly. I shoved the box closed and looked around desperately for somewhere to hide. The footsteps moved slowly through the kitchen above me. Then stopped directly overhead. Silence. Complete silence. My breathing sounded painfully loud inside the basement room. Then came another sound. Soft humming. Female humming. Right behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly fell backward. A woman stood in the doorway leading deeper into the basement. Blonde hair. Pale skin. Thin frame wrapped in a cream-colored sweater. For one horrifying second I thought Claire was alive. Then the woman smiled faintly. And I realized something even worse. She looked exactly like me. For several seconds neither of us moved. The woman stood in the basement doorway watching me with an expression I could not read while my entire body locked in shock. She was not identical to me. Not exactly. But close enough that seeing her felt like staring into a distorted mirror. Same pale skin. Same light eyes. Similar hair color. Similar height. Even the way she tilted her head looked familiar somehow. The soft humming stopped. "You are not supposed to be down here," she said quietly. Her voice sounded calm. Almost tired. My mouth went dry instantly. "Who are you?" She hesitated before answering. "My name is Natalie." Upstairs, faint floorboards creaked somewhere in the house. Panic surged through my chest again. "Is someone home?" I whispered. Natalie glanced upward briefly. "No. Mrs. Carter leaves the television on when she goes out." My knees nearly gave out from adrenaline. "You scared me to death." Her eyes drifted toward the wall of photographs behind me. "You saw those?" It was not a question. I nodded slowly. Natalie looked away immediately. Shame crossed her face for half a second before disappearing. "You should not touch anything. Daniel made those files about me." "Yes. Why?" Silence. Natalie wrapped her arms tighter around herself like she suddenly felt cold. "Because he is trying to find her again." The room felt smaller somehow. Harder to breathe in. "Claire?" Natalie nodded faintly. "He thinks certain people carry pieces of her." My stomach twisted violently. "That does not make any sense." "It makes sense to him." I stared at the photos covering the wall while my heartbeat pounded painfully against my ribs. "Who are you to him?" Another hesitation. Longer this time. "I met Daniel 4 years ago." "Were you married to him?" "No." Her eyes lowered slightly. "But I stayed in this house for a while." Cold fear spread slowly through my chest. "You live down here?" "Not exactly." She glanced toward the dresses hanging beside the wall. "At first he just wanted to talk. He asked questions about my childhood, my favorite music, my habits. Then eventually..." She stopped speaking. "Eventually what?" Natalie looked directly at me. "He started asking me to wear certain clothes." My blood ran cold. "The red dress." She nodded once. "Claire used to wear red all the time." Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run from that basement immediately. But another part of me needed answers too badly now. "Why did you stay?" I asked softly. Natalie laughed once under her breath. "Not because anything was funny. Because she was exhausted. Because Daniel does not seem dangerous at first." That sentence hit me harder than anything else so far. Because it was true. Daniel never yelled. Never threatened. Never acted openly cruel. Everything he did hid beneath concern. Patience. Love. "What happened to Claire?" I asked quietly. Natalie's expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear this time. "He told you she drowned, right?" "The newspaper said she disappeared during a storm." Natalie looked toward the basement stairs before answering. "That is not what happened." My pulse spiked hard. "Then what happened?" Before she could answer, a loud sound echoed upstairs. The front door opening. Both of us froze instantly. Footsteps entered the house above us. Slow. Heavy. My heart stopped. Natalie grabbed my wrist hard enough to make me jump. "Hide." "What?" "Now." We moved quickly through the second doorway deeper into the basement. My breathing shook violently while Natalie pulled me into a narrow storage room filled with old furniture and stacked boxes. She shut the door almost completely, leaving only a thin crack facing the basement hallway. Footsteps moved across the kitchen upstairs, then descended slowly toward the basement. Every step sounded louder than the last. My entire body trembled uncontrollably now. Natalie stayed completely still beside me, like she had done this before. The basement door opened downstairs with a long creak. Then silence. Thick, heavy silence. Finally Daniel's voice drifted through the basement softly. "Emily?" Hearing him say my name down there nearly broke something inside me. Calm voice. Gentle voice. Like a husband searching for his wife lovingly. Not like a man secretly collecting women who resembled his missing fiancée. "Emily," he called again. Closer this time. I pressed a trembling hand over my mouth to stop my breathing from making noise. Through the crack in the storage room door, I saw Daniel step into the basement room slowly. His eyes scanned the photographs first. Then the open Emily box on the table. The calm expression vanished from his face instantly. "No," he whispered under his breath. Fear hit me like ice water. Not fear for himself. Fear of losing control. Daniel turned sharply toward the dresses hanging along the wall. Then toward the basement stairs again. Thinking. Calculating. "Natalie," he said quietly. Silence. "If she is here, you need to tell me." Natalie beside me closed her eyes tightly but said nothing. Daniel stepped closer to the storage room now. My heartbeat became almost painful. "You do not understand what is happening," he said softly. "She is confused." Another step closer. "Emily is sick." Sick. There it was again. The narrative. The careful story. "I am trying to help her," Daniel continued. "The same way I tried to help Claire." Every muscle in my body tightened violently. Help Claire. Past tense. Not save. Not protect. Help. Natalie slowly leaned closer to my ear until her lips nearly touched my hair. "He does this every time," she whispered so faintly I barely heard it. "He rewrites everything until the women start doubting themselves." My chest tightened painfully. Women. Plural. Daniel stopped directly outside the storage room now. Only inches away. Through the crack, I could see one of his hands resting calmly against the doorframe. "Emily," he said softly, "I know you are scared." His voice sounded heartbreakingly sincere. "That was the worst part. But if you come out now," he continued gently, "I can explain everything." Then slowly, very slowly, the storage room door handle began to turn. The second the handle moved, Natalie grabbed my wrist and pulled me backward deeper into the storage room. My shoulders slammed lightly against stacked cardboard boxes while the basement door creaked open inches wider. Through the narrow gap, I could see Daniel standing perfectly still outside. Calm face. Relaxed posture. But his eyes looked different now. Empty somehow. Focused in a way I had never seen before. "Emily," he said softly into the darkness. "Please do not make this harder than it needs to be." My entire body trembled violently beside Natalie. She leaned close to my ear again. "Do not answer him." Daniel waited several long seconds, then slowly stepped into the storage room. My heartbeat became deafening. The room suddenly felt impossibly small. Dust floated through the dim basement light, while Daniel scanned every corner carefully. "I know you are scared," he continued quietly. "But Natalie is confusing you." Natalie's grip tightened painfully around my wrist. "He said the same thing about Claire," she whispered. The sound of Claire's name changed something inside me instantly. Fear cracked open into anger. I stepped out from behind the stacked boxes before Natalie could stop me. "What happened to her?" I demanded. Daniel froze. His expression shifted immediately from controlled calm to visible relief. "Emily. Do not." My voice shook hard. "Do not say my name like." "Everything is normal." Behind me, Natalie stayed completely silent. Daniel looked exhausted suddenly. Like he had been carrying something heavy for years. "You should not be down here," he said quietly. "Then stop hiding things from me." His eyes drifted briefly toward the wall of photographs outside the storage room. "You were never supposed to see that yet." Yet. The word sent cold fear through my chest. "What does that mean?" Daniel rubbed one hand slowly across his jaw before answering. "I was trying to protect you." I laughed once. Sharp. Disbelieving. "By drugging me?" His expression tightened instantly. "I never drugged you. I heard the recordings. You were having panic attacks. You made me black out. Emily, listen to yourself." His voice remained painfully calm. "You have been struggling with memory gaps for months. Because of you." "No." He stepped closer slowly. Because this place affects people. The sentence hit me strangely. Not because it made sense. Because for the first time, he sounded afraid too. What are you talking about? I asked quietly. Daniel glanced toward Natalie. Tell her. Natalie's face went pale immediately. No, she deserves the truth. You never tell the full truth. Silence spread through the basement. Then finally Daniel looked back at me. Claire never drowned. My pulse stopped cold. Then where is she? Daniel hesitated. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely uncertain. I do not know. The answer sounded real. Honest. That terrified me more than another lie would have. 8 years ago Claire started changing. He continued softly. At first it was small things. Memory problems. Confusion. Sleepwalking. Then eventually she became obsessed with this house. Natalie looked away immediately. Daniel noticed but kept speaking. She said she heard someone humming at night. My stomach tightened violently. She kept talking about another woman downstairs. The basement suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. One night during a storm, she disappeared. And you think this house caused it? I whispered. Daniel's eyes locked onto mine. I think something in this house changes people over time. Every instinct screamed at me not to believe him. But the fear in his face looked real. Not performed. Real. That is why you kept bringing women here? I asked. To test them? Daniel flinched slightly at the word women. I was trying to understand what happened to Claire. By collecting people who looked like her? Because they all reacted the same way eventually. My chest tightened painfully. You studied us. I monitored symptoms. You manipulated us. I protected you. You erased our memories. I tried to stop the episodes. The basement lights flickered suddenly overhead. All three of us froze instantly. Once. Twice. Then steady again. Somewhere deeper beneath the house came a faint metallic sound. Like pipes groaning underground. Natalie stepped backward immediately. No, she whispered under her breath. Daniel's face lost all color. We need to leave. Fear surged through me again. Why? But before anyone answered, the humming started. Soft. Female. Echoing faintly through the basement walls. Every hair on my arms rose instantly. The sound came from deeper below us somehow. Impossible because this was already the basement. Natalie looked terrified now. Truly terrified. It only happens when she is angry, she whispered. Who? I asked. But Daniel was already moving quickly toward the main basement room. We are leaving now. The humming grew louder. Closer. My pulse hammered violently while the lights flickered again overhead. Then suddenly, another voice joined the humming. Barely audible. Female. Weak. Daniel. Every muscle in his body locked instantly. Claire? He whispered. The room went silent. Completely silent. Then from somewhere behind the wall of photographs came 3 slow knocks. Knock. 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 Natalie backed away, shaking her head repeatedly. No, no, no. Daniel moved toward the photo wall carefully like someone hypnotized. Claire? Another 3 knocks answered from inside the wall. My heart nearly stopped. Daniel's hands shook as he reached toward one of the framed photographs near the center. Then slowly pushed against it. The wall shifted inward with a soft click. A hidden door. Cold air rushed from the darkness behind it, carrying the smell of damp earth and old water. Daniel stared into the opening like he could not breathe. Then he whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. You were alive! Before either of us could react, a woman's voice drifted softly from the darkness beyond the hidden door. Older now. Hoarse. But unmistakably real. Daniel! My blood turned to ice as a pale figure slowly stepped forward out of the hidden passage. Long blonde hair. Thin frame. Dark red dress. Claire.